I want to be successful. I want to make great beer. I want to make an impact, but you can't set out to do all of those things and actually achieve it. It's seeing it in real life and seeing the joy of what we've been able to create here and the celebratory nature of what people now love to come to Vallejo for. That is what makes me proud of what we do.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Tales, Ales, and Trails. In this episode, we talked to Kent and Ryan, owners of Mare Island Brewing. Now, there's a great story about how this all came together. Essentially, our best friends, we were visiting them in Vallejo, and they said, hey, we're going to take you guys out to Mare Island Brewing. It's kind of one of the gems of this area. It's right on the waterfront. We went there, had a great lunch, had a couple of beers, brought a 4-pack home, and did a Sunday Sips review of it. Kent and Ryan saw that Sunday Sips. They reached out. They said, we'd love to be on the podcast. We'd love to put something together. We've got a really good idea for what this could look like. So we went out on a Sunday morning to Mare Island, and Kent is an avid cyclist. And what he has done was put together a tour of the entire island where we'd stop at certain historical points of interest for the island, split a beer, talk about it, and it really became this just awesome combination of talking about the really storied history of Mare Island and all of the things that have happened in that area. And then pairing it with these two individuals who are so passionate, A, about making great beer, but making beer that has a story to it, that resonates with the community, with the history of the area that it resides in. I will not lie to you guys, this is my favorite episode of Tales, Ales, and Trails that we've ever recorded. We've talked to some incredible people, but the way in which we went about doing this, it's different than how we've ever shot a Tales, Ales, and Trails before. It's on the go. The camera work can get a little messy in certain spots. You're not going to see a lot of me in it because I am, for all intents and purposes, the cameraman. But it was really Kent and Ryan taking us on this journey and showing us the story of this island and why it's so special and how Mare Island Brewing has become a really integral part of it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I hope you guys check it out. Check out the full episode. It's the longest episode we've ever done for good reason. There's so many cool things that we talk about in this podcast. Without further ado, please enjoy this episode with Ryan and Kent of Mare Island Brewing. Cheers.
Cheers, gentlemen.
Cheers. Yeah.
So, history-wise, Vallejo was this guy who had the Mexican land grant for all of Solano County, most of Sonoma County, parts of Napa, and he ran the Presidio down in San Francisco. And Vallejo, which is the town over there, was his namesake. And he donated $300,000 actually and 250 acres to the building of Vallejo. But he actually lived up around Sonoma Square, and he wanted to move all of his belongings, which at the time was livestock back in the 1850s. He wanted to move all his belongings upriver and over to Sonoma. And one of his belongings was his prized white mare. And the way the story goes, the barge got out here in the strait, it capsized, all of the livestock was lost. And so the story goes, the guy who was driving the barge attempted to commit suicide the next day because he assumed he would be executed for having lost the general's prized white mare. God. And miracle upon miracles, the prized white mare turns up over here on what was formerly known as Flat Island and is now called Mare Island because of the miraculous saving of the mare.
That's great.
And so that's General Vallejo's sort of claim to fame. A lot of his relatives are still around town. He had like 13 kids, and his wife, Benicia, is what Benicia's named after over there. So he looms large in our world over here.
Funny enough, my uncle-in-law, we were just hanging out last weekend. He said he's a caretaker for an elderly guy up in Napa, and he said it's up in St. Helena. He said he went into his closet to grab something, and he had a bunch of our beers in there. And he was like, "Hey, I see you got a lot of Mare Island Brewing Company beer in there." He's like, "Oh, I love them, wherever." He is great-great-great-great-grandson of Ignacio Vallejo, who was the brother of Mariano. It's just like that tie just happened last weekend. But yeah, we wanted to make a Mexican lager, and so when we did, basic classic Vienna style with flaked corn, and one of the things that's always funny is Vallejo was actually Spanish, and he fought for during the Bear Flag Republic. He's on the not Mexican side.
Yeah.
There's we've named our Mexican lager after Vallejo or Vallejo because he is the Spanish kind of patriarch around here on that. And
It's a complicated past.
it's absolutely complicated past. But I mean, many things on Mare Island are for sure. But this when we re-release every year. It's actually one of our most popular seasonals. And I was trying to get it out every year, like around Cinco de Mayo. And then my sales rep kept going, "Hey, we need to get it on the shelf before Cinco de Mayo." So then it came out in April. This year it came out in March because everybody's always just like, "We got to get that Vallejo out." With Vallejo, the town, the name, a lot of the stuff that gets out or from the outside looking in is always negative. And so what's one of the things we like to do with our beer, and especially this one, put Vallejo's name in a positive light. And this is what we love. It's a great season. But
Yeah.
It's very good.
Okay, good.
When I was Golden Ale, the hydraulic sandwich, the coal shed stout, and then we did the Farragut's Farmhouse barrel aged saison. And the reason we just wanted to come out with a barrel aged beer is we're both winemakers. We wanted to throw something in barrel, and we didn't start bottling this until I think it was 2021.
Sounds right.
First time. So we were open for 7 years before we started bottling it. It's a Breton lacto bomb that as winemakers we try to keep it away from everything, but we ended up buying a separate little bottling line that we just do this on. Look at that hold.
Yeah, how's that?
That's a
Never done that one before.
And now we actually release this bottle as part of our beer club release for the seasonal, the holiday season. And it's part of what we call our three wise men of Mare Island. And yeah.
Kyle, that's you, closest to you.
I don't know how you guys are on sours, but
Nick, that's you. Sorry, just my fingers are sticky.
Oops, sorry. Hope we need to.
Actually, traditionally not like a bigger sour fan, but
He's been coming around.
this last 2 years I've been like surprising myself.
Yeah.
It's
The
pretty good.
IPA will burn your hop tongue out a little bit. You need a little something to still get you going.
Because I'm a stout boy, and then I'm a stout boy, and I love it.
So yeah, we just start with a really classic saison, and that one we traditionally ferment it for about 2.5 weeks. Throw it into white wine barrels that we get from the old winery I used to work at up in Napa called White Rock, and then 3 to 4 months is all we leave it on the Breton lacto yeast. Because one of the big things that sours is you can get it to be where it's like tarred.
Yeah.
And I want it to be a component, and that's actually kind of the style of our beers. Is we look at it like winemakers. We really want it to be a complete package, and so it's not like I want the Mick Jagger up there screaming on the mic. It's like I want a jazz ensemble where every instrument has a part. Yeah, with that one. So in this one, the sour does really well. You still get a bit of the barrel in there, but you also can get the floralness and the good backbone of the malt in it as well. So at least I do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Farragut was we refer to him as badass number 2. Basically, the Navy sent him out to open Mare Island. And the reason they chose Mare Island was because that strait that we were just at is super calm. You could build the ships here, deploy into the Pacific really quickly. And so Farragut came. One of my favorite things about Farragut is he hand wrote these letters, end of the day shipyard logs. Excuse me. Farragut wrote these letters, these end of the day shipyard logs in handwriting. On his very first shipyard log, he says, I erected the flag on the island, which he erected just right behind where we are right now over there. I erected the flag on the island that gave him the right to kick the squatters off the island. So homelessness was an issue even way back in 1854, and Farragut declared Mare Island Naval Shipyard open in 1854. And then one of the first few buildings they built was this, which is the Admiral's Mansion right behind us. This is the second incarnation of it. The first one was brick, and it came down in an earthquake in the late 1860s and was rebuilt in wood to try to negate the effects of the earthquake situation. But this front door lines up with where the flagpole used to be, which is right across at the park, which lines up with the administration building, which was also built, which lines up with the blacksmith shop, which are the three first buildings that were ever on the island. So we're standing where Farragut actually lived back in the day, albeit in a brick building. And he started in the Navy at the age of 9. I know. Wow. Because his dad was a naval officer and got called away to the War of 1812, and his dad didn't know what to do. He didn't have a mom. He didn't know what to do with his son, so he just drafted him in. His title was Boy, is what they called him in the Navy. And but he served from 9 years old to 62. And when we became a nation, Hamilton from Hamilton, excuse me, Hamilton from the Hamilton musical fame. Yeah. He had said, you know, we're getting away from the aristocracy. The title of admiral is not something we ever want to have. It smacks of monarchy. But Farragut stayed in the Navy so long that eventually they ran out of titles to give him, and they actually created the title of admiral, as he was the very first admiral ever in the Navy for us. Cool. He's got this amazing story. The big claim to fame, well, one of the big claims of fame he has is they were going into Louisiana, into Mobile Bay during the Civil War, and all these other ships that were in his flotilla, yeah, all the other ships that were there stopped because there were torpedoes, which is the word for land or for sea mines back then. And Farragut lashed himself to the sail or to the mast of the USS Hartford, and he uttered the phrase, "Damn the torpedoes, full steam ahead," and barreled on in there and captured it for the Union. And so we have "Damn the torpedoes" is our motto. They've even got it on the back over there. So you usurped that as our motto over all these years.
I mean, honestly, it was a pretty dumb thing to do, to go through the bay, but he got extremely lucky.
Extremely lucky. Yeah.
Then his flotilla was able to get through. But you know, he those that live get to tell the stories.
The stories ain't told by safe journeys.
That is absolutely true.
I like that. I'm going to borrow that.
Yeah.
There is this kind of comical, we'll talk about Alden Park later, but this park behind you is named after Captain Alden. Captain Alden was in the ship that wouldn't go in, and so Farragut was going past Captain Alden yelling, "Damn the torpedoes, full steam ahead," basically as an argument with Captain Alden back in the day. So the fact that this is his house and that's Alden's park and Farragut and Alden were arguing back in the day is kind of comical to me, the whole thing. Yeah.
So that's our Farragut's farmhouse, and you know, we have it under cork and cage. It's this one was released in December of 2025, so this has already been 6 months, even sitting in bottle. It just gets better and better over years. We still have some from 2021 that probably getting close to their peak right now, but
they age well.
They age very well. I mean, and again, being winemakers, we really wanted to have something in our library, some things in our library, because it's more than just this one that we're able to lay down. So yeah. Farragut.
All right.
Somebody does not know us, perceive us, like you guys have to get all the folks that we like really aim for.
Sweet.
Really great.
Sweet.
Hell yeah.
This guy talked for us.
We're needing to do and to do it right, and it's only really refined, I think, the process about how we approach everything.
Well, if you build something that is community focused, that is, has a lot more than if it's community focused, if it's, representative of the history of this area, and puts out a lot of quality stuff. I think people, especially in a community like this, will want to rally around that, right? I mean, I think there's a reason why these people recommended Mare Island to us, because there's something really special about what you guys are doing.
There's also this, what Ryan mentioned, of Vallejo's had a lot of bad press, recently, everything else. The pride of the folks who worked on Mare Island back in the day and what they did to, they'll tell you the welding gun won the war. It is the pride in the area. And that all just kind of disappeared when the base closed and then Vallejo went through tough times. So we got started and we put the Mare Island Brewing Company logo on a t-shirt, and that thing sold unbelievably, because there were just all these people that it was latent pride in what happened on Mare Island all of a sudden. So it's given the community, there's a lot, Vallejo's got a lot going for it, but it's been community a very obvious and front and center thing to celebrate as a successful thing that's out there, which has been great.
One of the things I like to always say too is Mare Island is the reason that Vallejo was so great. The reason when it closed, why it went to the tank. And it can also be the Phoenix rising again. And so utilizing that history to kind of bridge the gap and to bring that pride back has been something that, we've certainly seen. And it's been successful, not just monetarily, it's successful as far as like you guys, like say, you guys said people up there in Chico were talking about, if you go down to the area, you got to check out Mare Island Brewing. You're like, that's where we're going. And so that speaks to our heart for sure.
You guys talk about the community driven aspect of it all. And it's like, it just reminisces in my mind. Like me and Nick and I had been countless breweries. We've seen some that are not doing so hot and some that thrive right off the gate. And there's a trend of which ones are community driven and focused,
Yeah, those
says a lot.
Those are the ones that tend to succeed, the ones that stand out, that are making a difference, right? The ones that care about their community, that are invested in being good stewards in their community. And then everything I've read, everything I've experienced about you guys is that times a million.
We talk about the great good place all the time.
Yeah, there's a book out there, it's the Great Good Place, or the third place. That's what Starbucks calls it, but not work, not home, but the place where people can come together. And I think particularly a place as diverse as Vallejo, and we are the most diverse community in the country statistically when you look at the ethnic breakdown of Vallejo. But that also goes for all the attitudes and the opinions and the perspectives and everything else. And so we try to be not a neutral place, but a place where everybody can come and gather and actually stress test their ideas and not just be in an echo chamber online. So it's really important to us to have the public of the public of the pub, the public house of the pub.
I was going to say, that's the history of the public house.
Yeah,
is the gathering place when you're not at work, when you're not at home. That's the third.
We take that really seriously,
Yeah.
and I think it's a contributor to the fabric of society at the end of the day, not to be too grandiose about it.
Yeah, it's that kind of just speaks to the whole thing where that's where beer's on the back burner. What we think we're creating place first, and the beer just has to fit in with that, and that almost becomes the easier part at this point. Beer pretty formulaic, as IPAs throw a bunch of hops at it, get its ABV at S amount, make sure it doesn't have so much residual sugar, and that's pretty straightforward. But creating a place that people want to come over and over again, and not just check, all right, we've tried them, let's go try another place. That's super important.
And those places are not just places for people to come and kick back and relax after work, which they are, right? But also these places are places where ideas are born.
Oh yeah,
and connections happen. So
we do pints with politicians. We do all these different things that we do that trying to bring everybody together. And interestingly, all the politicians love us. They don't seem to ask us what our views are or anything, but they've got a chance to gather everybody.
They don't tell them, that's why too.
Yeah, that's true. We are. We try to be Switzerland when it comes to that piece of it, for good reason. We want all the community to feel welcome. So this stop is not a beer stop on the tour, but I thought you guys might want to see the inside of the chapel. So if you want, I've got keys. If you go, this is St. Peter's Chapel. It is the oldest naval chapel still standing in the United States. It was built in 1901. And the McAllister, who is the minister, the chaplain on the island, he managed to convince the federal government to give him $5,000 to do this. And he had this vision of all these stained glass windows that you see, but he didn't have enough money for the stained glass windows. So one of my favorite things is they had regular windows put in. Then he went to the sign shop on the island and he said, please draw me stained glass windows on tracing paper. And they taped them up on all the windows to fake stained glass windows. And then the way the story goes, for the first few sermons, he was like, if you want to buy a window, you can go in and buy it out of the Tiffany Studios catalog, which is very, very famous stained glass maker. And you can put it to in memoriam to whomever you want. And within 5 weeks, he had sold out all the windows. And it took him 2 years for Tiffany to basically build all the windows and install them all. But we are the single biggest collection of Tiffany stained glass under one roof in the country. There's 29 windows total in here. 25 of them are from Tiffany and 4 of them are not. And not to get too detailed, but most stained glass is made with regular glass, painted with colored paint on the outside and then baked. Tiffany stained glass, they actually bake the color into the glass itself. It's a totally special process. So these are priceless, like amazing windows. And Farragut's actually, this is, I've always found this slightly sacrilegious actually, but this is Farragut's up here. And this is Admiral David Farragut. So this was an honor to David Farragut for his service to Mare Island. I don't know who the creepy babies are at the top. I've never figured that part out. It must be donors or something like that. But this is, you know, giant triptych here, and then all the other ones that are standard. The round one up there is actually a very famous one, and then the one on the left of the round one, that is the only female archangel actually depicted. And then there's plaques all out throughout the chapel that tell the history of Mare Island and the Navy, various dedicated chapels. I could go on. The chapel tour could take 2 hours, but it's a pretty amazing thing in here, you know. So this is the cemetery. It's this crazy story where there's a big fire in San Francisco, and Lincoln had brought in the Russian natives back when we were friends with the Russians during the Civil War to hang out in the San Francisco Bay to try to depress the Confederate activity that was going on out there. San Francisco caught fire. The volunteer fire department was not able to put out the fire. It was about to take over the whole financial district of San Francisco. And the Russians docked, and a bunch of Russian sailors got off, and they did a bucket brigade, and they saved San Francisco. And 6 of them died in that, and they're buried down there. They didn't have their names, so they just say Russian sailor on the on the thing. And so once a year, this Russian Orthodox minister comes up and does a blessing of the, he's got the whole Dungeons and Dragons thing going on. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Well, we are at the grave of William Halford. So the Saginaw was the very first ship ever built on Mare Island. And it was built in 1857 was when the keel was laid. It fought Confederates, it fought pirates, it did minesweeping. It was over in China, it was in all these different places. And it was on its way back to Mare Island, and it was from Midway. And there's an atoll out there called Green Atoll. I don't know why they call it that because there's not a stitch of green on it. It's basically a giant sandbar that sits in the middle of the ocean. And it's so low and you can't see it from a ship, that it was famous for shipwrecks. There's all these shipwrecks that happen there. So maritime custom was if you were a military ship and you were coming back from Midway, you would swing by this little atoll, Green Island, they called it, and check for castaways. So they went to do that. They blew the engineering or the tidal calculations. They end up shipwrecking. 169 sailors make it safe and onto the island. The ship is gone, but they get all the provisions off, including the captain's skiff, which was a whaleboat. And then they're standing in the middle of the Pacific trying to figure out when the hell are we ever going to be rescued out here. So 5 guys offer to sail the captain's whaleboat, which is not very big, 1,500 miles to Hawaiian Islands to initiate a rescue. And yeah, we need some beer with us here.
Yeah.
No story's good without some. I can take this one out of your hand if you want to. That is, who's that? Okay, that's you, that's me. There you go. So the carpenters erect sails on the whaleboat. 5 guys get in this whaleboat and they set sail. And on day 2, they get swamped by a rogue wave. It soils all their provisions, soils all their fresh water. And they end up sailing for 29 days, catching water off the sails, catching albatross out of the air, flying fish, like anything they could do to stay alive. They tried to kill each other. They got scurvy. I mean, it just was awful. They pull into the modern day Kauai, where the modern day Princeville Hotel is. They capsize. 4 of them perish. One of them, William Halford, who's right here, he survives. He goes and finds King Kamehameha, the whatever number, and King Kamehameha sends a steamship and rescues the rest of the folks from the island. And so William Halford, who is a Vallejo native, he won the Medal of, I always get this mixed up, you know better than I do, yeah, Medal of Honor. He won the Medal of Honor for that. So he's one of, there's actually 4 Medal of Honor winners buried here in the cemetery, which is cool. And then we,
Yeah, so when we were getting started, I mean, we were looking at, I was trying to, again, excited about starting a brewery. What beers are we going to do? And, obviously being a West Coast brewery, got to make an IPA. But we started thinking about those that worked on Mare Island, probably more Bud Light, Coors Light, more domestic style drinkers for the age that they were. So we were like, we're going to do a golden ale or a really nice light beer. And so then started doing some history about the different ships and saw that the first ship built on Mare Island was called the Saginaw. So we were like, the first beer we got to release has got to be called the Saginaw. And of course, there's a lot of people that come in and say, "Who's from Michigan?" And I said, "You must be, because you know that Saginaw's in Michigan." But also, Draymond Green is from Michigan for the Warriors. But at the time, it was customary to name after the rivers. It was a river that they would name new ships after. And they were going to name this ship the Tusi. And at the time, the Secretary of the Navy, his name was Tusi. And when he found out that the first ship on an untested shipyard was going to be named after him, he flipped his lid and quickly went back to the, okay, what's the next river? The Saginaw. And so that's where we released the Saginaw Golden Ale. It's a 4.3% golden ale. We do dry hop it because we do want to have a nice intro beer or gateway beer into the craft world for those drinkers not really accustomed to having, hop beer style beers. And the hops we do dry hop it with are Sterling, Liberty, and Centennial. They're very American in name and that, but to keep a really nice grounded, earthy kind of golden ale flavor. And one of the things I'm extremely proud of is this is the #1 beer sold at Benicia Vets Hall and has been since 2014 when we took it there. So that's how I know like it has made it, and those guys really appreciate what we're doing. So we always, even on the can, we salute to William Halford. So it's, really appreciate the cheers, Halfords. Halford, what he's done. And funnier story, one of his great grandsons, I was running the Ferry Tap Room, which is right over there. And we were, again, a couple months open. We hadn't had anything in package yet. We were looking at 22-ounce bombers because that was the package that made you a craft brewery back then. And we were working on the label, and this kid comes up, and he has half leopard print on his hair, the dye, green on the other side, huge gauges, and the softest tone when he came up. He was very, very reserved, and he's just said, I was wondering, are you guys going to be packaging that Saginaw beer? And I was like, oh, you love the Saginaw? That's great, man. Yeah, we're actually working on the label right now. And he's like, well, the beer's good. He's like, but my great-great-grandfather was William Halford. Like right now, it's almost 80 degrees out here. And it's one of those things where, again, we realized like how what we were doing really connected with the community, and the family's still here. And so he ended up saying that there was some Halfords in Australia they wanted to send some bottles to. They all, still celebrate. I think the museum has his sword.
yeah, we have the ceremonial sword.
We got the sword. And so, yeah, I see the Sierra Nevada bottle up here every once in a while. I wonder where it is, and
Nobody knows.
it feels weird to be having a beer in a cemetery, but again, the way that we're trying to honor what Halford was able to do to save those 164 other sailors, we feel it's just appropriate to say we're keeping your story going.
Cheers. Yeah.
Accessibility, right, and also flavor profiles are a little bit more approachable.
Yeah, 100%.
Right, you're looking back up at all of Mare Island right here. The Blue Bridge that you see right there, the coal sheds are just down to the left of that. So that's where we started. The golf course, so first of all, the building that's hidden in the greenery over there, that is the old radio building, as well as where they programmed all the Polaris missiles back in the day. So before the missiles departed for the Soviet Union, they would plot out, they basically feed at the plots of the Soviet Union at that building. And then just below that, where you see the two red, kind of like radio towers almost, those are actually, they hold up the fence or the netting for the driving range. And this is the oldest golf course on the West Coast, 1854. It's now lying fallow, but there's an 18-hole golf course right here, which is kind of cool. And then you can see the ammo bunkers down on the left down there. And those have, you could also see the lightning rods that I was talking about all through that. So ships would pull up here from, that's Mount Tam. Ships would pull up from San Francisco under the Golden Gate, come up here, offload all their ammo at this side of the island. The ammo would get stored in all these ammo bunkers, pull up, get worked on up there, and then been taken back around. And then that's Vallejo itself right there. And then if you're looking north, that's Mount Veeder that you see right there. So Napa's on the right side of Mount Veeder and Sonoma's on the left side. And then Petaluma's back over on the far left over there. Yeah, it's a good view.
Hurry.
Yeah.
Was it not going to?
Fog bell.
Yeah, me and that one. This is Nick.
Cute.
Fortner.
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Cheers, guys.
So we're at the Spirit Ship, which was built by the workers on Mare Island when the base was closed. And all these tags represent ships that were actually built here on Mare Island. There was actually about 500 ships that were built on the island and about 10,000 more that touched its shores over its 142 years. So it was a little homage to all the work that went on Mare Island, and all these things welded up here. And they actually cling and clang in stiff breezes, so it's kind of cool. But you got Mount Tam off in the distance. It's just foggy enough you can't tell, but you could see the Golden Gate Bridge from here if you really were to look hard on it. And then Rodeo, Martinez, the Carquinez Strait right there. It's all the Vallejo Hills. It's called Sandy Beach down there, kind of a little famous little area, kind of a hippie area. And then all of Vallejo back up on the other side. So it's a pretty commanding 360-degree view. And we have, the reason we brought Fog Bell to this stop was because there was a very famous lighthouse that actually stood down at the end of the spit down here. And that lighthouse was the only way that kept ships from coming and going from San Francisco from wrecking. And they had a giant bell called a fog bell. And that's what this is named for. And we thought fog and hazy made well for a hazy IPA.
Yeah, kind of going back into like our philosophy on beer. Like we aren't trying to trend set. We're not trying to innovate new styles. And so unless it's been out and seems like it's not gonna, go by the wayside, like I don't know, a puff pastry stout or something along those lines, we'll wait and then we'll give it a try. So it was our 5-year anniversary. And everybody kept asking the year after year, you guys gonna make a hazy? When are you making a hazy? And we're like, for not making a damn hazy, they're gonna be gone. Well, hazies haven't gone anywhere for sure. And we're 7 years past that anniversary, and for our 5-year anniversary, we finally made our first hazy, which is our only hazy actually. And that's where we found the story about the fog bell. I wanted to tell that on, considering the style you can't see through, and neither could you see through the key fog.
It's fun. All of our icons, I don't know how well you can catch that, but all of our icons, we do them in what we call banknote style. So it's similar to how they did George Washington and money back in the day. But originally we had a woman who worked on them for us. She was an intern at Apple, and it's a long story, but we got her super inexpensively, and she did all of our branding. She did an amazing job. And we felt so guilty that we paid her so little to do that, but then she used our portfolio, the portfolio she did for us, to get a job at Boston Brewing Company, and she's gone on to like great success. So it was all a mutual thing. But she did the original one, but she couldn't do any more for us. And we come out with a new icon about every 4 or 5 months probably that we need an icon for. So we found this guy through Upwork, and we found him, and he's in Ukraine. And he's awesome, Yuri.
Yeah.
And so we'll send him a representation of what we want, and he'll crank them out. But he was cranking them out in the middle of the war. Like there were drones and missiles coming into Kiev when he's there, and he was cranking these things out and sending to us. And we were kind of like, this feels a little weird to like ask you to do this. He's like, no, I need the money, I need the distraction. This is a great thing. So we've had a, 8-year run with Yuri at this point.
There was the one point where we didn't hear from him for about 3 or 4 days, and it finally came on. He's like, "I'm so sorry, sir. We lost electricity." Oh, I do. We know what our needs are way less than what you're going through, but this looks awesome.
We actually raised money for them at one point, which was cool too. So our community extends to Ukraine.
Yes. Yeah, and these plates on here were welded on by Wallace and Mills.
Oh, that's right.
So Wallace and Mills. Wallace is one of our tank name honorees. We named all of our fermenters after different people that have helped us come up as a company. And he's a welder, and then Mills is a local artist welder as well. She does amazing work. They're the ones that did this project. And I remember when he was putting it up, they put the Saginaw one up there, and he sent me a picture, and I was like, "Where is that?" He's like, "I'm welding them up on the Spirit Ship." Yeah, beautiful view of the bay up here for sure. But this is also where the radio tower, the communication tower, would sit up here. I think it's that guy there.
That was one of like 30 or 40 that extended around to Sonoma, and they just captured all the radio communication that came in. This is also where the original pigeon coop was right here as well. Yeah.
Barrage balloons, man. Tell them about barrage balloons.
Oh, so
Just cause.
when Japan surprised and then attacked at Pearl Harbor, they assumed the Japanese fleet was coming in imminently to the west coast to invade the mainland, and they figured that they would send bombers first. And of course, where are the bombers going to go? They're going to go right to the premier shipbuilding operation on the west coast. So they raised what they called barrage balloons, and they put them all around the island, and they're on a metal cable, and they're helium balloons, giant helium balloons. And the idea was that you couldn't get a plane down close enough to do strafing around on the island because the wings would clip one of these metal wires. But what they didn't think through is that the fog extends all the way up here. And when the fog's in, the barrage balloons would be above the fog and basically just outline the island for the bombers if they were to be flying overhead. So the barrage balloons were not used for very long. But we have these really cool pictures of these balloons floating around the island back in the day.
They just look like Goodyear blimps that
Yeah.
are like just ended all along around. And when we finally figured out what they were, it was like, that's pretty.
Yeah, that was when we probably spent 6 months like, what are these balloons? And then we finally got an answer.
I drank your portion of the hazy, so
Good.
yeah,
Good. As long as it went somewhere.
it did. We didn't pour it out.
Good.
Did not do it in vain.
Fatherhood's getting better and better for Daphne.
Yeah,
All right, we just keep going straight, right?
yeah. Just got to bunny hop the concrete curb. Survivor's Tale Pale Ale.
I guess I should take this one off.
Take it the whole thing.
Yeah. This has definitely been part of my Mare Island Brewing upbringing. So, Survivor's Tale Pale Ale, the USS Indianapolis is the largest single loss of sailor life to this day in the Navy in open water. There were 1,196 on board. 883 hit the water after it was torpedoed, and 317 were rescued and survived 5 days later, where most of them were eaten by sharks or succumbed to their injuries from the initial attack. If you've ever seen the movie Jaws, that's what Captain Shaw says. He was one of the survivors of the Indianapolis. That's where a lot of people will always clue into the story. But the USS Indianapolis was actually quite an amazing ship during World War II. It earned 10 battle stars, and how you earn a battle star is going into battle, coming out on your own accord.
Wow.
It came in and out of Mare Island 3 times during the war. On the last time it was here, it was dive bombed by a Japanese kamikaze bomber, where it hit the bow and 9 sailors lost their lives, cut this huge gash into the bow of her, and she made it still to Mare Island on her own accord. They were supposed to be here, my understanding was 45 days for the overfall, and she was actually here in the Finger Piers down on the south end of the island. So all of the sailors and everything were in Vallejo enjoying their kind of R&R while the ship was being overhauled. And then they all, with about their 29, 30 days, were given orders to return to the ship immediately. They had loaded a secret component into the captain's quarters, welded it to the floor, and told the captain, if the ship goes down, this goes down with it as well. Nobody knew what it was. Everybody got on the ship, raced to Hunter's Point. They loaded more components on that were secretive at the time. And then from San Francisco to Hawaii, they traversed the fastest from the mainland to Hawaii still to this date, as far as how fast they were able to get on open water. They had they refueled and then continued out to Tinian Island, dropped off the secret components that they were carrying, and then continued on unescorted to return to the Pacific Fleet out in Guam. That's where the Japanese sub found them unescorted and shot 3 torpedoes. And it was July 30, 1945 when it was hit. And that's where the story somewhat ends as far as the life of that ship. The secret components were the components for Little Boy, the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima. It's, dark human history for sure, but the understanding of what history's been able to tell us looking in arrears is that the Japanese were ready, or the Allies were ready to send 2.5 million soldiers to make the Japanese surrender. And it was the decision to drop the bomb that actually caused the fastening of that decision. So ultimately, lives were saved, even though many were obviously perished in the nuclear era began. But that all left off of our docks here. Fast forward to 2014, we were opening the ferry tap room. I get an email from this woman named Peggy Campos. she starts the email off and just says, I don't know if you know the story of the Indianapolis, but my dad's one of the survivors. And this year's the 69th anniversary of the event. We all gather in Indianapolis. And this year's theme is San Francisco Bay, because the boys really loved their time when they were on Mare Island, as this was the last piece of U.S. soil that they stepped off of before that event. And again, my father was a big naval history buff. I knew about the Indianapolis story. I called Peggy, and it was one of those moments where you can look through history and try to make a beer for a story, but the history found us in that. And so she just said, we just want to get some of your beer out to Indianapolis, and we'd love to serve your beer to the boys. There's 32 of the survivors remaining. And I said, man, we haven't even opened our own tap room yet at this point, served our own first beer. And I don't know how hard you know it is to get beer across state lines, but this is going to be impossible. However, I did just get our logo pint glasses in, and I would love to send 32 glasses out for the boys to enjoy. They ended up pouring Anchor Steam, which was, obviously a San Francisco staple, RIP, even though I hear it's coming back, which we really hope it does. And then after that event, she gave me a call. She said, the boys just loved having your glass there. It really meant a lot to them. And I said, Peggy, I'm going to make a beer for you guys to celebrate. And so that was where we came up with the Survivor's Tale Pale Ale. So one of the things is Kent's an English major, and we really struggled over like how to really emphasize on the survivor. And we aren't talking about the actual people that survived. If the survivors didn't survive that ordeal, they would have never been able to tell the tale of those that perished with that. And so my girlfriend, now my wife and mother of children, we actually flew out to Indianapolis. The next year was their 70th anniversary, and I stood up in a room of 500 people, and we released the Survivor's Tale Pale Ale to everyone. At that point, there were 29 survivors remaining. And in the room was also the Japanese sub-captain's wife and daughter, and that's how much as a historic moment, and that this thing brought both sides together in there, which was intense. And I'm very proud to say at this point I am a honorary survivor with the USS Indianapolis organization. We actually hosted a movie. This really great director, Sarah Vladeck, did a documentary, and she interviewed every survivor she could and put together a documentary from their point of view. And when she released it, there was a couple places around the country that she was screening it, and we were able to do a 2-night screening at one of the first buildings that was built on Mare Island. That's cool. And we ended up taking all of the proceeds from that and donating it to the Angel Gwynn Scholarship Fund, which Gwynn was the pilot that actually saw the oil shimmer in the ocean, that went down and saw that there were survivors down in the water. So they all called him Angel Gwynn from that. But the story is just completely crazy. It goes on and on and on, so much so that the captain of the Indianapolis was court-martialed because they said that he wasn't doing the proper zigzagging motions. They brought the captain of the Japanese sub to court during the proceedings, and he said no matter what, I would have hit him anyway. I had him dead to rights. And they still court-martialed the captain. The captain ended up committing suicide in like the 60s, I believe, 50s or 60s, because every year all the parents of those that perished on the ship would send him hate mail during Christmas and their birthdays, saying it is because of your misactions that my son is no longer with us. It wasn't until 1993 when a high school kid in 9th grade did a history project, and actually it got all the way to Congress, and they took away that court-martial and re-enlisted his name to great services of what he did. So this story is one of those ones that like is insane. And then when Sarah's documentary came out, it was Paul Allen of Microsoft fame. He put together a research vessel to go around and find these historic ships. And one of the ships they were looking for was the Indianapolis. In 2018, they actually found the Indianapolis. And we received an email from the captain's wife that said, my husband is part of this research vessel. It's not in public news yet, but they just found the Indianapolis. And we would love to get some of the survivor's tale out to the crew to celebrate this discovery. I mean, how fast could we get that beer out to that ship? We got Survivor's Tale out to the ship. They enjoyed it as a crew in celebratory fashion. On the ship, they had 4 different full blueprint schematics of the Indianapolis. So if they find a ship, they would just look and see if it was what they were looking at on the schematics. The captain then sent me an email and said, "We have a special gift that's coming to you." And he and all the crew signed one of the 4 schematics, and it's hanging in the brewery right now. It's
Cool.
it's a story that just keeps giving and giving and giving. And the last place that, like I said, that those sailors stepped off of U.S. soil was right here at the Finger Piers on Mare Island. So,
Yeah.
but it's just a pale ale at the end of the day. Classic pale ale. The bastard stepchild between a nice golden ale and a IPA. But it's one of those beers that the old timers really appreciate, and the story tastes way better than the beer ever would. So
Yeah.
yeah,
It's good.
that's all I got.
I think that's quite a lot.
That's so cool.
Yeah, the Indy.
It's a mouthful.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
They got that beer out there by helicopter. So they delivered the beer to the ship out that was finding the Indianapolis, which I always find, it probably cost them 10 grand to deliver that case of beer to the, well, it didn't cost us, it cost them some. Paul Allen had
paid
more
their
money.
invoice.
Paul and Allen had more. Yeah, they paid $80 for the case or whatever, and that was it.
Yeah. But it's those kind of stories. It's like we don't like say we're gonna make a beer to honor. Sometimes we do. Now, of course, because some of these stories, you're just like, oh, we've heard that story. You got to make something for it. But this story found us, and it's so germane to the history of the United States and kind of how we, as allies, were able to end that incredible war. And the ability to be able to honor them through something simple as a beer, and to tell the story in 665 characters on the side of our can, to get somebody just interested enough to look on our website, look in Wikipedia, and just see the depth of how far that story goes is, it checks every box that
Transcends business.
Yeah, that it definitely transcends business for sure. Kent and I are of the same mind, where it's not like I'm like, oh yeah, that's Kent's thing. He just likes the history. Like the both of us are really dedicated to making sure that these stories have some legs, have a voice. Get off of this island, because it's super important that we all know what built where we are. Yeah, but it's the stories that the beer represents is way more advert. That's yours. Thank you. Yeah. This is one of my favorites, just because it's a all-day lawnmower sipper right here.
I've grown in these last 2 years. Pilsner has raised to the top of my bar. I love Pilsner.
Because you like to drink, and you like to drink a lot. But you like to keep it going. Do you know me? I know. This is a mirror right here on YouTube.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Oh, I forgot you're posting those.
So this is Ivy Bells, and we're going to tell the story of this building right here. So this building, the reason it's the color that it is, we call it the Pink Palace. The reason it's that color is because it's iron oxide paint over multiple layers of metal mesh that have all rusted. And so that's just like a dull rust color. And the reason was they didn't want any surveillance to be able to get through this building. So before the CIA, before the NSA, this was where all the secretive stuff happened on Mare Island. And it's known as ocean engineering. So if you ever run into somebody from Mare Island that says they work for ocean engineering,
OE, they'll say.
that is not what they were doing. It was ocean engineering. And the Ivy Bells is Rickover, who was the founder of the nuclear navy. Apparently he was a notorious a-hole, but he was serious about what he was trying to do for the Navy. He figured out that over in the Soviet Union during the Cold War, that between Moscow and the main naval base for the Soviet Union, there was a sea that was there. And he figured there had to be a communication cable there. So they outfitted one of the subs here on Mare Island, and it went over and it went around the outside of the sea until they found a sign that said "Warning, cable crossing here" in Russian. And they figured out that was the communication cable. So they were looking at this through their periscope. They track it down to 400 feet deep. They eject 2 divers and a piece of equipment that were trained and built over here in the Pink Palace, clamp it onto the cable, and we could read everything the Soviet Navy was saying back and forth between their main naval base. And the Soviets thought this was so secure that it was unencoded, the whole thing. And so it would collect for about 6 months at a time. They'd have to send another submarine over in the middle of the Cold War, mind you, over there to swap out the recording tape and then bring it back here. It was all transcribed here and it was sent back. And Reagan used to read these printouts before he went in to talk to Brezhnev during the Cold War. And that whole operation was called Operation Ivy Bells, which is what we call this beer, named after that. We have the diver that you saw on the label that is one of the divers that was down tapping the cable.
Yeah, there's a book called Blind Man's Bluff, and it starts off in a bar in Vallejo that was famous called the Horse and Cow.
Yeah.
We actually had a Hefeweizen called the Horse and Cow for that. But it starts off literally. There is a sailor that is back off the Seawolf, which was one of the submarines that they outfitted here on Mare Island, and he's calling into the switchboard of the White House. He's hammered. And he's wanting to get a hold of the president to tell him how awesome of a job that they just did on this secret mission. The MPs from the White House called the MPs on Mare Island and said, you would need to go over to the Horse and Cow.
Go get the boy.
We go reel him in because he's about to blow the whole lid off of this secret operation, and that's how the book starts. And we have a beer called the Hydraulic Sandwich IPA, which is probably our most successful beer to date. And when we were building out the ferry tap room across the water, we had posters up around the outside that had all of our plans on it so people could see what was coming. And I'd get knocks on the door all the time. People would be like, oh, we're so glad you're opening Mare Island Brewing Company. My grandma used to work over there, or I used to work over there. And one day I opened the door and there was this little lady. She was probably, 5'1", probably, 60-ish. And sorry if I'm getting your age wrong there, but she was ending up saying, she's like, I just love that you guys are doing a brewery over here because I used to work in that pink building over there, and if I told you what I did, I'd have to kill you.
Yeah.
And I literally was, I'm looking at this little lady, and I was like, I'm sorry, maybe you should shut up for both of our sakes. I got a lot of work to do today. And she said, but I worked in that building. It was OE, and one of the things we used to do is take ferry across, and we would have lunch on the mainland, and some of us would have hydraulic sandwiches, so this is just great. And I was like, I'm sorry, what's a hydraulic sandwich? And she just gives me a thought. She goes, come on, boy, that's where you drink a couple beers and get your ass back to work. And I was just like, man,
Liquid lunch.
hydraulic sandwich. And so Sherry was the one that coined, and she's happy to tell you, but when I started to get to know Sherry pretty well, and I read Blind Man's Bluff, and I was like, Blind Man's Bluff, they talk about ocean engine, OE. Did you have anything to do with that? And she goes, I don't know how they got that published, but I don't know anything about what's in that book. I don't know anything about what's in there.
I don't read it.
It's still top secret. And how did that story come out about how did the Russians find the device?
Well, there was a guy who worked for the U.S. consulate who had somehow found out about it. He walked into the Russian consulate, and he was $10,000 in debt, so he offered to sell it out for $10,000. The Russians negotiated him down to $5,000, and they got word that it was there. So the Soviets raised it. They put it in the Great Patriotic War Museum in Russia. And if you go over this day, it says down below that the silly Americans thought they could tap our cable, and we sent fake information through it and then brought it up. They neglect to mention that for 9 years we were listening to it. So history is written by the winners at the end of the day.
A sign just say,
Well, caution, cable crossing air.
Wait, there's cable here.
Isn't that brilliant?
Yeah,
It's just absolutely brilliant.
I mean, if you watch our podcast or listen to our podcast, I did a side episode where our electrician, he actually was he was the navigator for the USS.
Is it the halibut?
No, it wasn't the halibut. It was Russell B. The Russell B. And he was one of only 3 people on the submarine that knew the mission, because he knew where they were going. You get down in a submarine, they don't know where the hell they're going. He said it was funny because everybody would be like, I don't know, we're outside of France right now or wherever. And no, they were going to Russia and down their Cold War underneath the Russian Navy and ejecting 2 divers out to replace this thing, and then they would come back. And like I said, every 3 to 6 months, they would redo this trip and go back over there. So when we were coming, the story had to be told from us as a brewing company. And so when we were looking to do our first Pilsner, it's a cold fermented beer, the Cold War, that story. And, we do have the fog bell and we have ivy bells. There's 2 bells, but man, those bells have to be rung individually. They are so important to what happened here. And again, like Civil War, both world wars, the Korean War, Vietnam War, which ones? Spanish-American War. All of these wars had some thread through Mare Island, and so that's our touch into the Cold War.
Yes, man. Yeah.
So Kent's the guy definitely that does all the biking for our company. I have a Tacoma. I'm like, I don't understand why I ride my bike with my kids, but he says, oh, I just did a 30-mile, bike around the bridges and everything. And I said, why? What was wrong with your Tesla? Like, what happened there? But I got to say the biking crowd, you guys are special. You guys are. I mean, you're dedicated, and that's the thing. So when you're balancing biking and beer at the same time, I understand that sacred balance you're achieving there. So yeah, you got this. You got this.
Yeah.
Not me. I do it for recreation. I get my kids out to tool around, and then I probably get about, I don't know, a third of what we've done today in any kind of bike ride. So
I do enjoy. I'll go with him and his wife, and we'll do like, the flatland ride, like through like lower park and stuff. I super enjoy that stuff. Now if I didn't hit leg day, I can get out there riding for sure.
It's just such a good pace to see the world is what I really love about it. Like walking's great and all, but driving's too fast, walking's too slow.
Yeah.
Cycling, you can cover a lot of ground.
you also always talk about you're able to get a lot of your mental blocks. Like you don't have. It doesn't have solved most of my problems.
Yeah.
You don't have emails coming in. You're able to just.
Feels wrong, but I'm like, right, this is really stressful. I'm gonna go for a ride. I'll come back with it.
Yeah. I mean, he's usually saying that when I walk into his office with like a beer in my hand. I'm like, got it. I understand. Same thing. Same, different vices. Yeah. Same result.
It's also just better if you're like even like hiking or like because I've hiked, but hiking or mountain biking, I guess it's different than what, like now that I'm going into the gym and trying to get cardio. The treadmill just sucks.
Yeah.
It's like you're in one place. Like you might as well just get out there. Especially with us, we got Upper Park, like right there, like in our backyard the whole time. Why are we not using it?
That's great.
Get out there.
So this is Dry Dock Hop Water, and this is named after the dry dock which is behind us. And the dry dock, you want to see it? The dry dock was built in 1898 to 1917, I think it is. It took them 19 years to build this. They dug it by hand and horse back in the day. It is the oldest dry docks on the West Coast. And it's pretty cool, that black door that you see right there. They actually, first the pump, which is this greenhouse over here, fills this thing with water. They then pump the water out of the black door and cause it to bob like a cork, pull it out of the way, and then the ship would come in. Then they bring the black door back, pump the water out of the black door, which causes it to sink down and seal out. And they use the pump to pump all the water out. And then they have to gather all the fish that are stuck at the end and take them out. And the ship would fall down into a cradle of these concrete blocks like these two that you see right here, formed into a perfect form for whatever the bow of the ship is going to be. And so all this stone was quarried from the Sierra Nevada to exact trapezoidal specifications, numbered, brought down by rail, dropped into place, hand chiseled, and that's how they formed this dry dock. It's actually a super historic dry dock. And what Ryan mentioned earlier is that this is where they filmed Bumblebee, and they actually filled the dry dock for the first time in probably 20, 30 years. It's the only time it's been full. And if you watch it's Bumblebee is the Transformer movie. If you watch the very end of it, you'll see all this, and Bumblebee jumps into the dry dock and goes underwater and everything. It was super cool. Yeah, it was neat. So that's what the dry dock hop water is named after.
Yeah, as far as like, the current generations, they're drinking less these days, and so one of the things is we still have stories to tell. It's not necessarily all about beer, and making a non-alcoholic beer is really hard for somebody small like ourselves. I mean, we're doing about 2,500 barrels a year. So to be able to do a non-alcoholic beer appropriately, we need a flash pasteurizer and a lot of space to do that. And that's a lot of investment for a moment. And so we started looking at it and like, how can we continue to tell stories and still, reach out to that generation that's not possibly drinking at this time. And so we hopped up. We connected with a guy named Rick, who has a company called Hop XL. And he's actually, funny enough, he's in the cannabis business doing extractions, and he found out that he can do the same thing with hops. And what we are able to do with this is we're not using the hop pellets, which some people use. We're using the oils from it. So it is pure essence of the hop flavor. And he actually told me last week he's got an app that measures his blood sugar, and he kept seeing dips in his blood sugar going down. And he said, "Did you know that your hop water is actually the reason why?" He finally was able to pinpoint it because he would start to record when he was drinking a hop water, and it would reduce his blood sugar at the time. I said, "I don't know if I can put that on the can just yet, but this is something that is super refreshing. My kids love it." And and it's funny because the guy who helps us make our wine, he said his kid came down, woke up the other day at 8 a.m. and saw his dad drinking one of these and was like, "Dad, are you drinking a beer at 8 in the morning?" And of course he was like, "Hey, don't judge me, but at the same time, it's hop water," at that. So it's been a nice, refreshing addition to the lineup. And yeah, I love it. I never thought we would be making a beverage of sparkling water, but it's super tasty.
Yeah, you see there's not much traffic. It's really pretty peaceful, really peaceful, easily navigatable. Yeah, they'll bug the heck out of me. They're like, "Let's go buy some island." Of course they do, but then, of course, at the end, they're like, "We want to get popcorn at Brews." Right. Yeah. I would hear that. The natural progression right there. Ride a few bikes, got to get some popcorn at the brewery. Yeah, what I'm doing.
Ferry number 2.
This is a fun story.
So the story behind it is that we're standing at the ferry, the old historic ferry stop on Mare Island. And the island is actually an island. The only way to it in the early days was by ferry. And there used to be 9 finger piers with 9 different ferries that ferried up to 40,000 people onto the island during its heyday. And one of the ferries, ferry number 2 was the number of it, it was actually purchased out of Portland, brought down here to serve during World War II. And it's pretty cool. It still exists. So it was mothballed after a while, and it was purchased by some hippies, and it's over in Sausalito, in that kind of houseboat area that's over there. And it became this really cool spot where Allen Ginsberg, Janis Joplin,
Otis Redding.
And if you go Google, you'll hear people singing on this boat. You'll hear them talking on this boat or discussing politics on this boat. It became this just little like Haight Ashbury kind of corner of a little ship. So ferry number 2 kind of served during World War II and then served the hippies after that. So we made this beer. It was of all this.
Yeah, and it was during the pandemic where our partners in this, WEDA, who's the Weather Emergency Transit Authority, ridership was down, super down. And so what they decided to do was to partner with local breweries to have a collaboration. And so, there's other breweries that did great jobs. So they just kind of made cool, fancy labels. And we're like, no, we're going to find some history with ferries on here. And that's where we stumbled upon this cool beatnik ferry that was here. And so we released this and has increased ridership just because of this nice little beer.
Yeah. And our ferry tap room is the blue building that you see right across there. That was our original, that's where the ferry lands from San Francisco, actually. And we have a tap room that operates over in that spot right there. And we actually, one of the fun things was when we also have a whaleboat racing team. There's this, it's kind of like Confederate reenactors. They race these old 2-ton whaleboats that they used to race back in the 1800s. And there's six or eight teams here in the Bay Area. They have one here in Vallejo. But we do an annual race that we field a team and race the whaleboat. But anyway, when we did our very first brew over at the coal shed, we brewed the first keg. We put it onto a whaleboat. We rowed it across to the ferry tap room,
Washington across the Delaware.
and then we handed it up, and then we serviced out of the taps over there, the very first one. So we did our own little ferry crossing on our own back in the day, which was fun.
Yeah,
it's good.
Who's the first one that thought of that? Let's race these.
Yeah.
They're so heavy.
They're very heavy, and it's the lifeboats that we're on, typical Navy ships. And so it would be like, the USS Arizona was here, and we have pictures in our one of our rooms, and they would literally, it'd be a very bravado, like a machismo thing. Be like, "I bet we could beat your ship, whatever. Put your best men in a boat," and they would race up and down the strait here, and it kind of grew out of that, that machismo. That's fun.
Yeah. I love this story. It was one of the ones I was reading about. I do have to ask, was it one of those ideas that was like, this is a fantastic idea, and in the middle of it, as you're rowing across, like, all right, this is kind of tough.
It became we have these jerseys that we wear when we're rowing, and they have the Mare Island Brewing Company on the front and on the back. They say, "Yak, you're shifty." because everybody would have their shift beers and come race. And then, yeah, middle of the race is a little bit
I
intense.
think we also had on another one. It says start slow and taper off.
Yeah, that was it. That was it. We won for a lot of years, and then as we've gotten older, we don't win as much as we once did. But
It's in the same vein of like Ket being more the athletic one of the partnership here. He definitely every year is out in the boat. And the one year I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. We won that year. We won. Hey, I was like, hey, John Elway, I'm going out. Like I did my season. This we did good. But yeah, I don't have anything else to prove, at that point. So
it's super fun.
You just want me to do it again?
yeah,
That.
It's super fun.
yeah.
Super fun.
But again, it's like, how would you ever be at a brewery and be able to put on like whaleboat races, the waterfront, and everything? It's, we are. I don't like to use the word blessed, but like the ability to find the spaces we did and Bay Area waterfront is super unique. Like they always say, you start a business, it's location, 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 and Mare Island is just such a super cool location that. I mean, hell, it brought you guys down from Cheapo. Like and we were out here on the waterfront listening to an awesome forklifter haircut. It's a beautiful day.
I was telling people, like my coworkers and stuff, I was like, yeah, Nick and I are going down to, because they're familiar with the podcast now.
Yeah.
And I was like, Nick and I are going down to Mare Island and they're like, what? Dude, can I tag along? I was like,
That warms our heart.
Yeah.
We always used to say, if somebody's coming in the Bay Area, we just want them to think like, hey, you got to stop by Mare Island.
Yeah.
So it's
That's the big, hairy, audacious goal, is to make it a destination for anybody who's flying in San Francisco. Is like, all right, I'm going to wine country, or I'm going to Muir Woods, or I'm going to Santa Cruz Boardwalk. Mare Island's kind of fits into that whole thing. We would hope someday.
You're gonna get a good beer, but hopefully you get an experience. Like that's the hope.
Well, I mean, with the tagline like, whaleboat racing, people go, excuse me?
Yeah, exactly.
Pardon?
First Saturday in October is the whaleboat races out here, and they are a hoot to come watch. You guys should come row with us.
Yeah.
That immediately
You guys should come row.
came to mind.
Come row.
Dude, yeah.
We'd love to have you.
Yeah.
Well, it's the
Careful
third-
what you wish.
There you go.
Cover ourselves a Sunday.
Really turning it on, huh?
Are you guys on a time frame at all?
No.
This is the Bunya Bunya Tropical. And we're talking about the two palm tree kind of looking trees on either side of the admin building right there. Do you want to take the Bunya Bunya, Ryan?
Do you want to do the history side?
Sure.
Or the beer side?
Either one.
I could do the history too.
Do both.
Yeah.
All right, so there was a commander of the island. I think it was James Alden, who I believe he was. And one of the things he really enjoyed was a lot of diversity in horticulture. And so he actually put out to any sailor that was going out into the world to bring saplings back to Mare Island. And there's such a vast, diverse flora of different species of plants on the island, and it's because of Alden, who the park is named after. And so these two trees right there, if you can see, it's on that side and that side, they're from Australia. They're called the Bunya Bunya tree. They produce a pine cone that's about as big as our heads, and when they drop, they literally could kill you. And so we wanted to do a tropical IPA, and so we're like, all right, what's a good tropical kind of like story we could come up with? And so Bunya Bunya is kind of a fun name.
Yeah.
We created this IPA that we add pineapple extract to, and this is our tropical IPA that we do.
And this is one of the very few beers that we add any sort of extract to. We're actually kind of purists when it comes to beer styles overall. Like we have a very tight box that tries to adhere to sort of historical styles for kind of obvious reasons in terms of our orientation towards history. So this was one, but it was fun to put this together and put the pineapple in.
And the crazy thing is, I hear all the stories. Like they used to literally cordon off those when the pine cones would drop, but I had not seen one big bananas. And they are razor sharp. Those leaves razor sharp. Like you don't want to go over there and try to grab one off the ground because they're super sharp. So is this IPA, super hard.
And the building's pretty cool because you can see it's brick and also wood. It was built in different eras as an administration building. The wood side over there actually has they paid everybody in bullion, like in gold and silver for years. And they have two vaults that sit over one another because the top one's so heavy that it had to sit on the other one that's down below. And that's where they kept all of the precious gold and metals to pay everybody on the island back in the day. So those vaults are still there. They're now filled with architectural, there's about 10,000 architectural scrolls in there that are kept in those vaults. So that building is like where all the major decisions were made for Mare Island back.
And then that flagpole you were talking about, like, yeah, so that
Was right there, and that flagpole came around the horn on Farragut's ship. And so when he needed to erect a flagpole, he didn't have a flagpole, so he actually cut the mast off of his ship, erected it there. It's been there since 1854, and then it was starting to rot at the bottom of it. And so the Historical Society, we had to take it down, and then we got it analyzed, and they analyzed the wood that came out of it, and they traced that wood back to a forest back in England and figured out that's where the ship that Farragut built was from. So we could actually verify the provenance of that flagpole. So it's being redone now by the National Park Service, which is down on the island doing the ships down there. And then we're going to re-erect that. It'll probably take us a year or two.
I don't remember which one, but one of those cannons is off the Hartford as well.
The one to the left of the tree is off the Hartford. So when he uttered "damn the torpedoes, full steam ahead," Farragut was standing right next to that cannon that you see right down there, which is super cool. It took, there were gun crews of 14 that ran those cannons, because that cannon is 9 tons by itself. There are 23 on the side of every ship of the Hartford. And the cannonballs themselves are 80 pounds. And then they had these little kids, 14-year-old orphans that they would bring in the Navy. We called them powder boys. And they would run down and
Boy, the powder,
they would run them death. They would run down into the depths of the ship and get these black powder, gunpowder that were in flannel, and they were 18-pound cartridges, and run them back up. And this be this like choreographed 15-person firing of the cannon, and they could fire a cannon every 90 seconds.
Oh, that would be the force behind it.
Yes, it was amazing, just amazing. The whole thing when you get into it. Every 90 seconds.
Those kids were pulling up the 80-pound cannonballs. I'm like, those are some buff children.
Yeah,
Really fit children.
yeah.
Since we're talking about terminology, I got to ask, Yardbird. That was the term for civilians that were working at the shipyard, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And it was a not so complimentary term that the Navy military used for the civilians. They called them the Yardbirds.
enlisted, we say, oh, they're just a yard, but the civilians on there.
But the Yardbirds are a proud group.
Yeah.
They're very proud.
And I believe in today's terminology, you guys have kind of turned around the connotation of Yardbird, because you have the Yardbird Club. Yeah.
Yardbird Beer Club.
Which,
Like I said, proud of it.
They're the civilians that keep our shipyard going, for sure. Yeah, we have a really awesome rabid fans at Yardbirds that, we now have a dog tag machine in our coal shed that you can see that literally we type up every release. They each get a dog tag, and they come in like with the chains of how many dog tags they've been in Yardbird members. It's a super cool thing to see, like how much they've supported us.
it feels like such an awesome opportunity to not only try a lot of what you guys are doing throughout the year, but maybe some of the more exclusive, innovative stuff that you guys are putting together.
Usually when we do drop a new beer, we try to drop it in a beer club's shipment. Like the beer club members get it first. And the thing that, again, we're both winemakers by trade, and there's a lot of wine clubs. And so for us, yes, again, it's about the beer, but it's about our parties. Like we have like killer ripper parties. Like I already told you about the pigeon racing we did at one. Like there's always some kind of sweet party and game that goes along with the theme. We just did, because of the ships, we did a pirate themed one, which I said I would never dress up as a pirate in my life because it's very Peter Pan. It's like, yar, I had a full-on pirate captain outfit, and I 3D printed up some ships, and we had a lot of slightly inebriated folks blowing through a straw down the Boy Scout, got to put out water, getting the boat as far down to win their name on our beer club trophy. But yeah, the beer club, the Yardbird members are super dear to us. It's super dear, and it's definitely, like I said, we did it off of a wine club, but we looked at many different beer club offerings, and it has to be fun. You have to feel like you get something.
Yeah.
All of our beer club members, when they bring their dog tag in, they get a penny sampler each time they come in. We can't give away anything free, but you get a 1 penny sampler. And we started that spring of 2015, and we opened in July of 2014. So it's gotten like a straight from the get. We wanted to have an awesome beer club, and yes, you guys definitely enjoy it.
Yeah.
Whether I'm talking through the camera or I'm talking to you boys.
Go find out. Scary.
21ers black
I
lager.
don't know if you want to move this way so that you're not in the echo.
Yeah, sorry, I knew the echo was there.
Wow, that's such a different.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's
It's a grandstand from when they would have big bands here that would just echo out.
so the 21ers. This is a super dear story in beer to us. There's a monument behind Kyle here, the little black obelisk that you see down there. It's a very nondescript memorial that's here, but one of the most amazing stories of what happened on Mare Island, it's almost never told, is in the 60s during the sort of, it's the end of the Kennedy years. There was about 5,000 workers on the island, 1,000 of them were African American, and there was about 200 supervisors, and of those 2 were African American. So there was this horrible inequity of the ability to rise up through the ranks if you were a person of color. And so this group of 21, they actually were 25. I've never totally figured out this, but the original ones were 21, called themselves the 21ers, and then four more joined in. But anyway, there were 25, but we'll call them the 21ers. The 21ers gathered together and they wrote a letter to Kennedy. And in that letter, I mean, this is not just a risk of their jobs. You can imagine what this was back in the day. They wrote a letter just saying how all the inequities on the island. Kennedy gets this letter, he hands it to Johnson and says, I want you to call the island, tell them there's to be no repercussions for any of these guys who wrote this letter. And it triggered a review of all the naval bases and the racial, how they handled racial issues in all of the naval bases. And other naval bases in the area, including Alameda and others, started contacting the 21ers and saying, hey, what did you write in that letter? How did you do that letter? What did you do? And if you go and read the Civil Rights Act, there's a paragraph in the Civil Rights Act. It looks like it's almost lifted word for word from the letter that the 21ers sent. So this is a story I didn't even know for years. And then there's there's 2 of the 21ers left. One of them is in late stage Alzheimer's, but there's one other guy, Jake Sloan.
Jake's amazing.
Super cool cat, great guy. He's gone on to be an amazing labor organizer and attorney in the Bay Area, actually. And he came out and we did this it was when the Black Lives Matter was happening and they wanted this.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys remember that whole, like, during George Floyd, and then all the gurus banded together, reissued buys, and we got them Black Lives Matter. You know, you're seeing it on camera here. We're 2 white guys.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we didn't want to do is just check a box about how we want to support a cause. And the biggest thing that we did, we knew we had heard about the story, and we wanted to do a story about these guys on Mare Island. And so we did not do the Black Lives we didn't do the Blackest Beautiful Year is what it was. We didn't sign on to that because we wanted to do ours for what we do for a better cause. And that's no shade to anybody that signed up to it. I think it was a great cause. I think that raised a lot of great money. But this story was one that was so dear to what Mare Island was, but even more so, like we said, like to the civil rights movement, that it had to be told in our way. I think it's that way. So we, Kemp actually knows Jake Sloan, and we reached out to him, and he even like approached it. He's like, hey, just want to make sure before we step in something that we shouldn't even like touch. This is what we'd like to do. Is this something that works out? He's
so supportive. He was so supportive. He's like, you guys' heart is in the right place. And he said, if anybody slings any arrows at you, I'll stand in front of you, which was really the Easter egg. Awesome. It's sensitive, you know. It's
very good. Yeah. And so we make this black lager that we release every year for Black History Month in February. It always comes out like the last week of January, so we can get it into our local retailers. And it's something that on the can we had it's kind of like wreathed around the monument, all the names of the original 21ers that were on there. And again, it's our way to celebrate and to collaborate with the amazing stories and diversity on there.
Yeah, this was a real fun one.
So there's 25 names on it.
There's actually 25 names on there for the 21ers.
But they're the 20. They joined and they were like, guys, we already made the team.
We already made
Yeah, they did. And they do this. It's like 21 # 25, like they'll do on it.
The hat's already made.
Yeah,
sorry.
Exactly. But yeah, the 21ers it's something that we're able to release every year. And this one, I didn't write this recipe. We had a head brewer at the time, and he was so stoked to write this one because he's like, I love lagers and a black lager.
It's almost like smoky.
It's so light and so approachable as well that even if you don't like dark beers, and you can easily enjoy and respect this one right here. as we got started, and as I said, we had the four beers that we had the four beers that we started with: the Saginaw Golden Ale, the Hydraulic Sandwich, the Colchette Stout, and the Farragut Sornaus Ale. Everybody kept asking, when are you going to do the DIPA? When are you going to do a DIPA? And for me, I had worked at Lagunitas and I was a winemaker. I'd never really written recipes. And so it was one of those kind of like black boxes for me. And so I was like, everybody kept asking for a DIPA. And I was like, all right, I'm going to start to write this recipe. I had a good friend of mine from Lagunitas that I worked with. He consulted for us, and he had written over 80 recipes, and so he kind of worked on our first recipes with us, but I was like studying those and trying to figure it out. And so I wrote the nuclear sandwich recipe, but I was so nervous to get it out. Maybe it's one of those ones where it's just like, man, it's one I get asked about so many times that I just can't release it. So the first recipe of mine that I wrote that I released was our Monomoy Martzen, which is my wife's favorite. And so after I knew that was it, I was like, all right, I got to get this that DIPA out. And so one of the things, I already said the story about the hydraulic sandwich. We're like, all right, since they did nuclear submarines on their island, we have the hydraulic sandwich. We need to kick it out to the nuclear sandwich and just blow this thing up. And so this thing is a 9.1% ABV. And the biggest thing that I can say about this is it drinks like a single, but hits like a double. And I don't know if you guys have experienced that one yet.
Might have.
Might have one night twice.
Yeah, I was gonna say that your guys' review of this, like, is spot on. Like,
Sweet.
and like, didn't even know you guys before meeting you today, actually. But through email and whatnot. But that podcast, I was like, I could not have done this any more justice than what you guys did to it. And so we figured it would be a good ending here to show you about the nuclear.
Well, so right behind us, this missile, which you see right here. I mean, it's clearly a representation, but this is a full-size Polaris missile. And if you can imagine, there were 8 of these in a nuclear submarine, all sitting vertical in the middle of the submarine, sitting off the coast of the Soviet Union throughout the entire Cold War. And the idea was that they couldn't launch on us because if they did, we could launch on them from right there. So it gives you a scope of how big these nuclear submarines were to be able to house 8 of these things back in the day. There's also another one right over here. It's called the Subrock, and it's actually one of the cooler pieces. This was a defensive missile. Sorry, we got a lot of echo in this place, don't we? Let's go there. So this one over here is what's called the Subrock. That's a nuclear-tipped missile horizontally launched from a submarine. And the idea is that if you had an enemy submarine, this would be horizontally launched, go up into the air, land just above the other submarine, and then a nuclear charge would go off underwater, and it could kill any submarine within about a mile of when it went off. They never ever fired one of these other than in testing or whatever, but you've got anti-submarine there and the Polaris missiles, which were designed to be fired on the Soviet Union back in the day. And it's a little chilling to think about the whole thing.
I will say, as far as like operationally as a brewery, we had this on draft when we first released it. And the one thing is we as bartenders and as responsible servers, you can see somebody and you serve them their second nuclear sandwich. But a lot of these guys and gals would think that, hey, I could take another one. And when that first one hits while they're drinking the second one, everything goes south. And so I actually had bartenders say, hey, we should probably not serve this on draft. Yeah. And so honestly, we have not served the nuclear sandwich on draft for about 7 years. And we always serve it in cans to go. And a lot of people give us a lot of gruff about like, well, if I can't drink it, I'm not going to buy it. And I'm like, that's fine. You don't need it on that one. But this year, we're actually going to do a nuke night. We put into our seasonal release this year is that we're going to have a couple nuke nights I believe it's the month of July, where we're at each one of our tap rooms, we're going to have one night for 4 weeks in a row where we release the nuclear sandwich on draft. But, again, it's going to be, it's our touch back into the water to hopefully not have a 1 mile radius of blowing up submarine. Yeah, like, now we back.
I'm glad you mentioned that because when I step this a little bit. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that because, when we were here last and I was having the hydraulic sandwich on draft, it was delicious. And I was thinking about, grabbing a 4-pack to go. I went up to the staff and I was like, hey, what would you suggest for me to grab as a 4-pack?
Where do I go from here?
Yeah, they're like, you should probably grab the nuclear sandwich. I'm like, really? I'm like, yeah, no, it's something else.
Yeah.
Like, all right, let's do it. And it was, as we're drinking it right now, it was incredible.
Yeah.
Like, just
I mean, it's the catalyst to you guys being here, and you know the fact that our DIPA did bring you down, like that's a fun thing. But it is, yeah, it's one that, again, 9.1. We try to have balance. This is where we even say on here, we threw balance to the wind on this one. You know, like you talk, when you're making a DIPA, you just got to throw. I mean, we do 2 dry hops on this one so that we can get the layered hop effect in there. But at 9.1, it still tastes and hits very smooth.
It does.
It's like you don't get the bitterness, you don't get the kind of that alcoholic smack in the ass that a lot of them can give you, and that's the problem. There lies the risk. So you know, again, the nuclear era is not something that you want to come up against, and if you do, be wary.
So the next one, the triple.
The triple, yeah,
The atom bomb.
the A bomb,
Yeah. The ITJ. Yeah.
the bomb. I mean, I think at this point, again, our whole philosophy is like we want you to enjoy these beers with a meal, right? You know, as winemakers, it has to be part of the experience, not the experience and the end of the experience. And so this is definitely as far on the fringe as we get. We did do that Russian Imperial Stout, but again, like you're not going to be slamming the stout, you know.
Those are end of the night drinks.
You might have a cigar that a friend brought out, and you're like, you know, I've got a great like double stout to have, but. Yeah, I think that this is probably the echelon of where we'll go in our ABVs. We're not doing a barley wine. We're wine guys, so no barley. But at that point, it's like, well, we're just gonna do wine. Yeah, at that point.
Or chicken with seafood.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, what happens in a couple of years when I come down here and I was like, guys, I thought you guys were never gonna do this. What?
Everything evolves. Everything evolves.
You grow, you know.
You get older.
Yeah. You get tolerance.
Yeah.
So there's a little of all of that. But remember that thing I said we were never gonna do?
Yeah.
What if we did it?
I mean, that hazy IPA is a great example of that. We're never going to do a hazy IPA, and then on our 5-year anniversary, it's now a year-round beer because you as a business we have what we want for sure, but there's a little bit of the market that you kind of have to. They're part of the equation. You know, it's like. If we were just a lager brewery, you're only really hitting a subset of those that enjoy lagers, which is a lot of us these days. But, it's also fun for us in production to be able to come up with these new beers. I mean, that's the fun. I've got a 1-barrel pilot system that we call the Dojo. It's just like, that's where we get to have fun. Yeah, we're making hydraulic sandwich all the day over in the big tanks or whatever. Let's come over here and let's make an ESB. Yeah, gas. Something along those.
Like you said, like, was it like pairing, beers, brews with food and stuff like that? Like it goes full circle where it's Pilsners are so good with lunch.
Yeah.
And like me and my coworkers go out and we'll go to a local place and we'll get a Pilsner or something and a sandwich or it's perfect.
Life's a balance.
Exactly. So then, for dinner, I want something a little heavier. And then a little dessert stout after.
There's a nightcap to be honest. So, yeah.
We do a really cool event called Founders Day, and it's we partner with a acting troupe, and we do live reenactments of historical events or historical people. Second weekend in September of the year, I'm walking through with all the actors at 2:00 to show them their stations. We're actually going to recreate the Hartford, the 14-person team Hartford firing clips, which is kind of
Wow.
Coal Shed Stout, baby.
Stop. For Brian D. back in.
Just so I don't forget, I do want to thank you for all of this.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you so much. Through this entire thing, I've been thinking, like, we've done a lot of brewery tours, we've done a lot of beer tours. Yeah. I've never had one as in-depth, unique, as fulfilling, and as honestly as cool as this one. This is such a
Great to hear. Mare Island is the gift that keeps on giving, man. And clearly we enjoy it as well. Like it's sort of spine tingling, all the things that happened on the island back in the day, and to be able to talk about it and frankly get a spotlight shown on, forget about the brewery for a minute, spotlight shown on the history that's it's quickly disappearing because the age of the people who worked on the island that remember the glory days of the island are quickly disappearing. And so we feel like we have a bit of a mission at this whole thing. So thanks for coming down.
Absolutely. Yeah, the time with us. It's a great thing.
Come down more.
It's all taken up outside.
I was like literally outside. I'm like, where the fuck?
No, there's no tables out there.
They
so I was
left
like,
me.
I guess we have to leave them for the paying customers in the whole thing as we go. So anyway, we're grateful that you came down and spent the time with us for sure.
We always kind of have this one final question about, what the most rewarding part of what you guys get to do is. I know it's probably a tough one, but if you had to think about what the most rewarding part of owning and operating Mare Island Brewing Company is, what would it be?
I got mine.
Go for it.
Yeah. I think for me the most rewarding part is our impact in the community. It really is. Is that again, Ken and I started. There's no easier thing to be like, why did you start a brewery? Well, two guys and start a brewery, and we have the kind of experience that people get to have here. But the impact that we have had on this community has been something that you can't measure. You just can't. The many times during the pandemic is a really great example there. I mean, we were selling rice, beans, eggs, toilet paper, things that you couldn't find, but we found the ability to get them and sell them to our PA. People were handing us $20 bills on $1 of toilet paper and saying, you guys need to be here on the beach of side. You see? And so the Vallejo is a very unique and special community, and there's not many people that are championing it. And I feel that this has grown into something more than just being a brewery. It is a place the community strives in. And I think that has been something that you cannot put in a business plan. You cannot seek out to do because you will fail. And I think that has been the most rewarding thing, is the impact that what we thought would just be a cool dream as Fermentus to start here in this cool community. That is something that has been the utmost reward. We were on this, and as I said, that we saw somebody go by with our T-shirt on. I have no idea who that person was, and just to see that support. I have teachers in my kids' school who don't know who I am, but when my 6-year-old son says, "That's my daddy's brewery," and they just tell my 6-year-old about like, "Oh, that's so cool. We love going down to that spot." Like these aren't things that we set out to do. We wanted to be successful, but the impact of what we have been able to be in a community that does not have the light outside of our community is something that you cannot put a dollar sign. And that has been, to me, the most important thing. I want to be successful. I want to make great beer. I want to make an impact, but you can't set out to do all of those things and actually achieve it. It's seeing it in real life and seeing the joy of what we've been able to create here and the celebratory nature of what people now love to come to Vallejo for. That is what makes me proud of what we do.
There you go.
Such a good answer.
You didn't insult me with that. I mean, that's part, right? I truly believe we are making a difference in the beer, and it's not what we set out to do. It's just where we are. It's the responsibility that we own.
Let's say Ryan stole my answer, so I'll give you number 2. And this will be a little bit of an odd shucks, but this partnership I've had with Ryan has been unbelievable. This is my 7th business I've started, and 4 of those have had partners. They've been fine, a couple of them have not been fine or whatever, but we've had a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of fun. And we agree on about 98% of everything, and there's 2% we don't agree on. 16 ounces later, we're there. It's not hard at all. And we often we divide the company up into 2 kind of general areas. We overlap a lot, and I kind of manage this, and Ryan kind of manages that. But the nice thing is, if Ryan's on vacation, somebody can come to me, and I can answer that question with like 98% of proficiency, that I can answer it the way Ryan's going to answer it, and vice versa. And I know it's in good hands when I'm not there. And I think having a partner in crime to make beer, preserve history, put together public houses, it's a really, really cool thing. And it's a sum that's greater than the sum that's greater than the parts. What's the saying? The sum is greater than the The whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
We
Can
had
you
a few
edit that
beers
in?
on this. We had a few beers.
Can
on
you
this
edit
trip.
that in? But that has been super fun, and it started as a friendship. I was a little worried the friendship might struggle through a business relationship, because that can happen sometimes, and it has grown stronger and stronger. I mean, Ryan's seen my kids grow up and vice versa and everything else, so it's been fun. So I know you guys have a partnership between the two of you, and it's been fun to see what roles the two of you guys play. Actually, has been kind of fun in the whole thing too, because we've seen it in the podcast, but that's it's pretty special in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and when you, like I said, when you create something, you never know who you're creating it with. You have an idea, and we always we have fun with it. Like that's the end of the day.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. Yeah,
Most of the time.
For sure. There's outside forces that kind of
Business can be
pressures
tough,
on that.
but
Business is very tough. But we always try to find the time to say, like, my work wife. He's my work wife in this podcast right now. But I really appreciate that, and I cannot say enough about, you can't get into something unless you know who you're getting into it with.
Agreed.
Marriage, business relationship, whatever. And if we didn't have each other's backs, it didn't matter what the community had for us. Is that it's an equal relationship amongst all those parts of the whole. So
you're here.
cheers. son. Yeah. So yeah, I'm out
With
there.
that, guys, I need cheers. Thank you so much again.
Quick. Can't leave him out.
Cheers, guys. Cow. Cheers to you guys. Thanks for making the journey down from Chico. And I'm really glad that you have friends in Vallejo that made you swing by and allowed us this opportunity on your podcast. This is super awesome.
What a way to
Friends now.
Yeah.
What a way to spend a Sunday.
100%.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.